So it's that symbolism.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, the whole question of time and what time is, etc. I mean, what you've referred to is very, very similar to what the emissaries one day just said. And by the way, just remember that time doesn't exist. It was like we'll just plunk that in. Time doesn't exist because when I would say to them, "Can you give me some time frames?" They would say no because we don't have access to that. Anyway, time doesn't exist. So it's like it does here, and it feels like a bloody long time that we've been waiting for stuff. Um,
Yeah.
a couple of things I wanted to talk about that you mentioned about this journey that we're on and about the soul journey, and I agree with you. This is just the vehicle. Gordon Smith Duran is just the vehicle, and we whatever we think we are, we're so much more than that. And as you say, we're just sparks of God. Um, but the journey that we're on is this soul journey of I suppose we choose the lessons that we want to learn these particular lessons. We want to have these experiences as a soul by way of the vehicle. And one thing I see, and if you're lucky, you can do it early, and if you're not lucky, you do it later on. But I think we've all got to do it at some point. Is to know to find out what our purpose is, what it is that we're here to do, why did we choose to come here? And it's more that, rather than why were we put here, which puts us into a victim mode. I was put here. The question is, why did we choose to be here right now in these days? Why did we come here specifically now? And so I work with people to help them to find out the purpose. And the purpose is a very simplistic sentence, which is just, I am a describing word and then a doing word, like a noun. It's a naming word, but comes from a doing word. Like, I'm a happy worker. That's what our purpose is. It's very, very generic. It's not very specific when you chunk down to it. But what happens is when you find out what your purpose is, and you reflect on your life, you go, oh, yeah, now I see. Every time that I was in my bliss, and I think these feelings that you were talking about, this joy, this being, when we're in our bliss, the reason that we're in our bliss is because we're fulfilling fully our purpose. And therefore, there's nothing else to feel except divinity, I suppose. We become the creator that we are. And there's this really interesting process that I'm running a course in November, and it's about self-forgiveness, because as you were talking about, we need that. We need to forgive ourselves so that we can move forward. And one of the processes that we're going to do is where we start through physical anchoring. We look at the difference between I, me, and self. It's interesting that you've been talking about three, and I'm aware, three is a very important number. I, me, and self, they're very, very different parts of ourselves. Because when we talk about it, we say, I am a teacher. And the I it's very kind of linked to the ego. This is what I am in this world. But then, I want you to get to know me. Who's the me? It's not the I. I'm a teacher, but I want you to get to know me. And then, I need to be kind to myself. Who's the self? It's not the me. You don't say, I want to be kind to me. Oh, no, to myself. So we've got all of these pieces, and you were talking about being fractured. We've got all of these pieces going on, and we've got a lot more, because when we're small children, we get called he or she. So we have that person as well, that piece of us, and sometimes them, don't say anything to them, And so we have lots of different, but I mean, the key ones are the interesting ones, I think, are the I, me, and the self. Once we understand what it is that we're made up of, it becomes much easier to surrender to the process, because quite often the I is in conflict. And this is what you were referring to, this self-trust. The I doesn't trust the me sometimes. And it mightn't trust it myself either. I don't trust myself. We're talking about two distinct parts of ourselves. And I think our job is in life is to get to a point where perhaps with a bit of luck, we become one unit. You know, goodness knows what we can achieve when we're one unit instead of all these fractured pieces.
Well, it's when we're one unit that we have access to creativity, to imagination. All the higher centers open up, which are the sort of the link between this world and the beyond. This is where communication occurs. And this is what's almost bitten out of us in life. Like to be automaton, to be zombie-like, to just be reactive in the world, to be fearful of expressing ourselves. It's to be flexible physically, emotionally, mentally. These are qualities which we don't see. When people get older, you see that they become more and more rigidified. Their body seize up.
Sure.
When you see a person seizing up, that is the final movement of mental and emotional rigidity. That lack of internal flexibility within our psyche finally cuts to the body. And it's sad to see that, but it's the world we're in.
Sure, absolutely. There was another thing that I wanted to add to the process, because I think when I'm looking at what we're talking about this process through life. It's a journey, isn't it? It's sometimes an interesting journey, but it's a journey. And what I've found, and certainly in my own personal experience, because that's the best that I can offer. Once you understand why you chose to be here, when you understand your purpose, then the next job, I suppose, is to surrender to the purpose. And you've talked about this as kind of like giving yourself over, giving your soul permission to take the steering wheel. And this is something that I came to, and I quite how I came to it, I suppose. Well, there are a lot. There are clues left everywhere. Clues are everywhere in this lifetime, and you either see them or you don't see them, or sometimes you reflect back and you think, "Oh yes, that's what that was about." And so this idea of surrendering up, and I remember reading a book, and the woman was saying, "You won't surrender because you're scared, because you think that if you surrender, then bad things are going to happen. You're not going to have control of your life. The higher power is going to make you do something like move into a monastery or leave your family or change your job." And she said, if this higher power knows you as it does, how would it ever ask anything of you that would be bad for you? And I thought, yeah, I agree. I don't know what I need more than this higher power. So I surrendered myself to, at the time, it was the universe, because I didn't have a good relationship with God. So I just surrendered myself up, and I did it repeatedly. Every time I went out for a walk in the countryside with the dogs, I would just say, I surrender myself. And to this day, I still do it on a weekly basis. Not my will, your will. Your will be done, just as you said. Not my will, your will. Since I started doing that, miracles have happened in my life. Miracles. And I believe that's because when we're trying to go through life holding the steering wheel and forcing it, we're not going where we're supposed to be going. But when we let go and say, right, okay, show me, what is my path? And suddenly miracles happen and beautiful situations happen. But above all of that, I'm blessed. I believe I'm blessed in life. But it's this inner peace that you feel. these feelings, this inner peace of, ooh, what a relief. When I surrendered, it was the biggest relief ever that I didn't need to work hard anymore, that I could trust that the universe was going to show me, guide me, manipulate me, coerce me, push me, whatever it has to do. And I think that's where we need to get to, this surrendering.
Absolutely. You know, when actually, I just wanted to share something with you. You were talking about forgiveness, this course you're going to do.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting thing about forgiveness, coming back to the conversation of anger, is that you cannot forgive another if you're weak in yourself. If you are a victim, you cannot forgive. You might say the words, but it's not going to catch you anywhere, because before you can forgive, you've got to release all that anger that's inside you. All that suppression has got to come to the fore. Otherwise, if you're a victim, how can you forgive someone else? You're a victim. I'm a victim. How can I forgive you? If I see myself as a victim, I can't forgive you. Not possible.
Absolutely. Let me just add to that. I do this beautiful. I've got this. I was given this process by somebody else, but the process is exactly as you've described it. To be able to reach forgiveness, there's a process that you've got to do, which is to get all of the anger and the disappointment and the sadness and the frustration, everything cleared out first. And then when you're on the level playing field, then forgiveness comes. But even then, forgiveness has been sold badly. People don't understand what forgiveness is. They think forgiveness is saying it was okay. Don't worry about it. It was okay. And that's not what forgiveness is. And in the process that I do, I have to reaffirm and sell what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is, because exactly as you say, we cannot forgive anybody. We weren't given that job of forgiveness. That's for somebody else, I believe, some other being. But what we can do is we can release ourselves from that contract, that connection. So what I explain is that forgiveness is actually saying, even though what you did was absolutely unacceptable, I am choosing to forgive you because I am choosing to be free of this now. And so forgiveness sets you free. But the other person's got to live with what they've done, and they've got to sort out their stuff. That's not your business. And we don't have the power to forgive other people their sins. That's not our job. But for us, yes. And so the forgiveness is the letting go and being free. And I use this. There was a beautiful situation I saw of a woman who was in a court, and her son had been killed by a man, young son. And the man had been sent to prison for his life. And just before he was taken away, the woman said, "Please, I need to say this to this man who killed my son." And she said, "I'm telling you now that I forgive you. I forgive you for what you did, because I am not prepared to carry you on my back for the rest of my life." And she let it go. And I think that's what forgiveness is. It isn't saying it's okay. It wasn't okay. But forgiveness is letting yourself be free of it.
So with my clients, I got a phrase, which at the appropriate moment, I get them to repeat. And it goes like this: without condoning your past actions or behavior, I nevertheless completely and utterly forgive you from the bottom of my heart. And the importance there is to separate that we do not condone their behavior, their egocentric behavior.
Sure.
That's not why we forgive, and we don't forgive the personality. Is the soul within that we address out. So there's two parts to it. The first one is addressed to the ego side. I don't condone your past actions or behavior. And then see past that to the soul that is within each of us. Nevertheless, I completely and utterly forgive you from the bottom of my heart, because, and I don't add this at the time, but it becomes obvious in the session, because we recognize that it takes two to tango.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. The other person, they have a soul, and their job may well have been, because they also came into this world through a whole lot of conflicting and pain and suffering, whatnot. And then maybe they are our father or our mother or a sibling, whatever. And their behavior towards us we perceive as totally obnoxious, difficult, whatever. And it totally screws us up for the rest of our lives. And now we come back later on in life and now we want to forgive them. Well, first of all, we have to vent all our anger. We have to put it all out on the line. And then we can see them clearly. And then we can see that they're damaged. We can see that here is a damaged person whose parents, grandparents, they themselves were all damaged and is gone down the line. And they couldn't have done any different. But a soul is in that body. And that soul knew that that is where it had to go in relation to us. So in fact, although they were terrible and horrible and all manner of things, they were helping us to free ourselves because they didn't free themselves.
Sure.
But simply by being who they were, they help us to free. And so that is what we forgive. We forgive the soul behind it. We acknowledge, it's not deliberate, that
I agree.
it's part of the learning process.
I agree entirely, and what you referred to, and I'm aware of the time. We'll probably have to come to an end soon, won't we? But what you've referred to is something which are the steps of spirituality, because when we're forgiving somebody, this is on a very physical, material level. I'm forgiving you, and once that's done, then the steps going forward is to understand that on a macro level, everything is happening for a reason, and we've come into this with this plan. And so, when your parents are awful to you, you've got to get rid of that trauma, and then you can rise above it and think, oh, well, I arranged this before I came here. So really it's not fair to be holding this kind of awful grudge against people. And it's like this two-step thing, which is physical and then move up to the spiritual. It's like that story that of the student who goes up to the maestro and he says, "Tell me, what is the Buddha?" And the maestro is there and he said, "The Buddha is an expression of God." Okay. And the disciple was so happy and he went away. Anyway, like a few months later, he went up to the maestro and he said, "Tell me, what is the Buddha?" And the maestro said, "There is no Buddha." The student said, "Hang on a minute. The last time you told me that the Buddha was the expression of God," he said, "that was to stop the baby from crying. Now that the baby stopped crying, I tell you, there is no Buddha and there's no God." It's kind of, let's chunk you up to another level. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a nice chat. Thank you.
Yeah. Sal, beautiful and lovely. I mean, I get the sense that we could probably talk forever, going from subject to subject. Yeah. And that would be lovely. But yeah, we'll keep this. I might split this up into a few because it's quite a lengthy one, isn't it? But thank you very much for sharing your time, Sal, and your wisdom and your understandings and everything that you've gleaned over the years. Very interesting.
Well, thank you for working with me.
Welcome. Okay, and we'll chat again.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.